Rise of Nazi Party. Between 1919 and 1929, Adolf Hitler went through a transformation that would change the course of history. He began as a bitter, unemployed veteran, just one of millions of men lost after World War I, and ended the decade as the leader of a radical political movement that would one day destroy German democracy from within. When the war ended, Hitler returned to Munich with nothing but anger and confusion. He felt betrayed like so many other soldiers who believed Germany had been stabbed in the back. Still wearing his old uniform, he stayed in the army, doing small tasks to survive. One of those tasks was to attend and report on local political meetings in Bavaria, and that's where it happened. In September 1919, he walked into a small gathering of a group called the German Workers' Party. At first, he sat quietly in the back. Then someone stood up and spoke against German nationalism. Hitler exploded. He shouted them down with such passion that the room fell silent. The group's founder, Anton Drexler, was so impressed that he invited him to join on the spot. A random assignment had just opened the door to a political career. Once inside the party, Hitler discovered something he'd never known he had: a voice that could move a crowd. He wasn't logical, but he was powerful. He spoke with anger, rhythm, and conviction, turning every fear and frustration of the German people into blame and hate. By 1920, the tiny DAP had a new name: the National Socialist German Workers' Party, the Nazi Party. It sounded both for the people and for the nation, and that was exactly the point. That same year, Hitler helped write a 25-point program that demanded the rejection of the Treaty of Versailles, the unification of all ethnic Germans, and the exclusion of Jews from citizenship. It was the first draft of what would later become the ideology of Nazism. By 1921, Hitler had seized full control of the party. He called himself the Führer, the leader, and demanded absolute loyalty. Under his command, the Nazi Party began to look less like a political group and more like a private army. He created the SA, the brown shirts, who protected Nazi meetings and attacked opponents in the streets. Germany's democracy was fragile, and the sound of boots and fists was becoming part of its politics. Then came 1923, the year of chaos. Germany was collapsing under hyperinflation. Money was almost worthless. Hitler saw his chance. On the night of November 8th, he burst into a Munich beer hall, fired a pistol into the ceiling, and declared a national revolution. But when his followers marched the next day, police opened fire. 16 Nazis and 4 officers were killed. The Beer Hall Putsch had failed. Instead of ending Hitler's career, the failure made him famous. At his trial for treason, he turned the courtroom into a stage. He shouted, argued, and claimed that he only wanted to save Germany from traitors. Newspapers printed every word. To his supporters, he looked like a patriot, not a criminal. He was sentenced to 5 years in prison, but served only 9 months. In prison, Hitler had time and an audience. He dictated Mein Kampf, My Struggle, a mix of autobiography and ideology. In it, he described his dream of a pure German nation, of expansion into Eastern Europe for Lebensraum living space, and of a world without Jews. The hate that had simmered in Vienna and burned on the battlefield was now written down, structured, and ready to spread. When he walked out of Landsberg prison at the end of 1924, Hitler was no longer just an agitator. He was a man with a plan. He realized that guns wouldn't bring him power, but ballots could. If he wanted to destroy democracy, he first had to enter it. From 1925 onward, he rebuilt the Nazi Party from the ground up. He created a network of regional leaders, Gauleiters, and poured energy into propaganda. Under Hitler and his organizers, men like Gregor Strasser and Joseph Goebbels, the party spread across Germany, with rallies, speeches, and symbols of unity. For a while, Germany seemed to recover. Thanks to American loans and the Dawes Plan, the economy stabilized. In the 1928 election, the Nazis won just 2.6% of the vote. It looked like Hitler's moment had passed. But beneath that small number was a growing machine, disciplined, funded, and ready for its next chance. Throughout this decade, Hitler mastered his craft, the art of manipulating emotion. He learned that people didn't crave facts, they craved feeling. They wanted someone to blame and someone to believe in. He gave them both. He made himself the center of the movement, the Führer who embodied the nation's pride and pain. By 1929, Hitler still didn't have power, but he had everything else. A loyal organization, a clear ideology, and the ability to move millions with a speech. All he needed was a crisis, and before the year ended, the Great Depression arrived. From there, history would begin to speed up. The stage was set, and the man who once shouted in a Munich beer hall was about to challenge the future of Germany and the world. Rise to power. From 1930 to 1939, Germany entered one of the darkest and most decisive chapters in human history. The decade when Adolf Hitler, once a fringe extremist, exploited crisis after crisis to turn a fragile democracy into a totalitarian state. In less than 10 years, he weaponized despair, national humiliation, and economic chaos to build the Third Reich, a political, military, and propaganda machine that would soon drag the world into war. When Germany lost World War I, the nation was left broken. The Treaty of Versailles demanded crushing reparations, stripped away territory, and forced the German army to shrink to a shadow of its former strength. It wasn't just an economic wound, it was a wound to national pride. The new Weimar Republic, born in 1919, tried to build democracy on the ruins of empire. But most Germans never trusted it. They saw it as a government forced on them by foreign powers, a democracy without dignity. And when conspiracy theories spread, claiming that Jews and communists had stabbed Germany in the back, hatred began to fill the air. Then came the Great Depression in 1929. Factories shut down, millions lost their jobs, savings vanished overnight. And while the country's politicians argued endlessly in parliament, one man promised certainty, strength, and revenge. Hitler stepped forward as the voice of the people, promising work, stability, and a return to national greatness. The Nazi Party turned pain into power. Their message was simple and terrifyingly effective. Germany's suffering had enemies, and Hitler would destroy them. He vowed to tear up Versailles, rebuild the military, and cleanse the nation of those he claimed were responsible Jews, communists, and liberals. Propaganda minister Joseph Goebbels built a media empire to spread that message: posters, films, rallies, and endless images of flags, fire, and unity. At the same time, Hitler's private army, the SA, filled the streets intimidating rivals, attacking opponents, and making chaos look like order. To many frightened citizens, the Nazis began to look like the only force strong enough to restore control. In the 1930 election, the Nazi Party exploded from just 12 to 107 seats in parliament. Suddenly, they were the second largest political force in the country. By 1932, they were the biggest. Still, President Paul von Hindenburg hesitated to give Hitler real power. But Germany's conservative elites made a fatal mistake. They believed they could use him, that they could tame the fanatic and control him from behind the scenes. So, on the 30th of January 1933, Hindenburg appointed Hitler Chancellor of Germany. It was the legal path to dictatorship. Only a month later, on February 27, the Reichstag, Germany's parliament building, went up in flames. Hitler blamed the communists and demanded emergency powers. Within hours, he suspended civil liberties, allowing arrests without trial and censorship of the press. Then, on the 23rd of March 1933, the Enabling Act passed, giving Hitler's government the right to make laws without parliamentary approval. In a single vote, democracy was erased. From that point forward, everything changed. Political parties were banned. Trade unions were dissolved. The press, schools, and culture all came under state control. The Gestapo and SS became instruments of fear, silencing opposition and spreading terror. In June 1934, during the so-called Night of the Long Knives, Hitler ordered the murder of his own party rivals, including the leadership of the SA. By eliminating potential threats, he secured total control. When President Hindenburg died in August 1934, Hitler merged the offices of President and Chancellor, declaring himself Führer, the supreme leader of Germany. The Republic was gone. The dictatorship was complete. Under Hitler, every part of society was reshaped to serve the regime. Children joined the Hitler Youth, where they were taught obedience and devotion to the Führer. Women were pushed into motherhood through the German Women's League, told that their highest duty was to serve the nation through birth. And in 1935, the Nuremberg Laws officially stripped Jews of citizenship and banned marriage between Aryans and non-Aryans. Discrimination turned into law, and law turned into persecution. At the same time, Hitler revived the economy through massive public works projects and military rearmament. Unemployment fell. The Autobahn highways stretched across the country. The Volkswagen, the people's car, became a symbol of progress. To many Germans, it looked as if Hitler had delivered prosperity. But beneath that prosperity, Germany was quietly preparing for war. Abroad, Hitler tested the world's limits and found none. In 1933, he pulled Germany out of the League of Nations. In 1936, he reoccupied the demilitarized Rhineland, facing no resistance from France or Britain. 2 years later, he annexed Austria in the Anschluss, then demanded Czechoslovakia, and got it through the Munich Agreement, as the West once again gave in. Every success made him bolder. He became convinced that no one would stop him. And so, on the 1st of September, 1939, German troops invaded Poland. 2 days later, Britain and France declared war. The Second World War had begun. The rise of Hitler stands as one of history's most chilling warnings. He did not seize power by force, he was handed it, legally, by a democracy too weak to defend itself. He used the law to destroy the law. He used freedom to end freedom. And those who thought they could control him were the first to be consumed by him. This decade, 1930 to 1939, reminds us that democracy doesn't always die in an explosion. Sometimes it dies in applause. It dies when fear outweighs reason, when people trade liberty for promises of safety and pride. Nearly a century later, the lesson still echoes. No democracy is immortal, and every time society looks for easy answers, for strong men who promise to restore greatness, there's always another Hitler waiting in the shadows.